Well, hello, my name is Sean Smith, and I'm just fortunate to be part of this effort today to better understand this new normal, this distance and online learning. And for this segment, we're going to do 15 minutes on assessment in this new normal. And a couple things to get started. First of all, I'm going to time this, keep it within 15 minutes, so I've set my timer. And the second thing is, yes, I need a haircut, but we'll leave it there, okay? So let's get started. So we're going to take a look at assessment, what we know. We're going to take a look at it in respect to that progress monitoring, particularly in terms of IEP measurement and goals and objectives, benchmarks, and then also in terms of just assessment plus, about what we know about assessment. Now, I want to get started by pointing down to the bottom there of the schoolvirtually.org. That's a website that several colleagues and I created over the last month, and you're going to find a lot of tools there for parents as well as educators. And it's not just simply a list of tools, but it's connecting information about, well, assessment, engagement, designing, planning, engaging parents, communication, a host of other things, not only the issues, but also potential solutions. And what I'm talking about here is on there as well. So let's get started. All right, so I thought today for assessment, we break it up into three different areas: direct measures, indirect measures, and then overall the authentic measures. And so in so doing, of course, we can connect it directly to what we need to measure and report for progress and mastery for an IEP, but also we can do these same things just for traditional assessment we're doing, both formative, summative, that regular feedback we're trying to collect as we move through our everyday, our every week, units, things of that nature. All right, so one thing I want to start off with, and this has to do with some research myself and I've done with a number of colleagues across the country over the last, well, nearly a decade now, and that is we can't ignore what we already know in online learning. And prior to the pandemic, online learning was well enforced. Tens of thousands of students with disabilities, if not millions, over the course of the last decade. Millions of students in general education classrooms, or typically developing individuals, have participated. Tens of thousands of teachers have worked in this across all 50 states and 6 territories. So there's some things to learn. Why the content management system, Sean? Well, the first thing we need to remember is that if we have access to a content management system, Khan Academy is for free, for example, and a number of these are for free during the pandemic, they offer formative and summative measurements, assessments, direct measures. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and I'm going to give an example of those. So don't forget or neglect those. Those are available for us for those purposes. The other thing is the learning management system, which a number of us are probably using. Now those, of course, instead of being pre-made like the content management system, often they give us the tool, they give us the infrastructure, but then we'll have to create the actual assessment. But everything from Google Classroom to Schoology to Blackboard gives us a lot of support there. A lot of the automatic grading allows us to see the data in a dashboard system. A lot of power there, so don't neglect that as well. We could spend, by the way, in each of these two areas an entire 15, 30, 40 hour conversation on these areas, but we're only going to mention them for a minute or two. But let's give an example here. So for example, in a CMS or content or learning management system, everything from multiple choice to math problems to spelling, vocabulary, we can put images in there, etc. This is IXL, gives an example. This was a drag and drop kind of component with a multiple choice kind of selection here, which ones you're going to select to put into which area. And then of course, IXL is one, and this was an IXL example. They'll offer a dashboard. They'll offer information from the progress monitoring perspective about what we know in terms of the data collection, what we don't know. And so don't forget about these. They can be used, and again, not only content, but also learning management systems. So Khan Academy and others will provide these as well. So with that said, we need to be aware that there are a number of tools out there beyond what's in a content management or learning management system, but also there's a number of tools that have been out there for years for progress monitoring. These may be available within your district, something to think about. And again, this is simply the National Center on Intensive Intervention. It provides a tool that allows you to get the listing of everything from mathematics, reading, spelling, grade level wise, good information about the types of computer-based assessments for progress monitoring that offer trend and aim lines, etc., etc. Many of you are already using these. They're probably available in your district. Just don't forget about them. And this is simply a national center that gives you the list of those. All right. When we're thinking about the different digital tools outside of a learning management system or a content management system or outside of a progress monitoring system, we got to think of everything from Nearpod to Seesaw to AnswerPad to Quizlet. Things go on and on and on. TinyTap. There's a number of different tools out there. They allow us to create assessments. They allow us to have embedded assessments. They allow us to grab from assessments already exist that might be aligned with, let's say, the history of Kansas. Someone else has already created that for us, and so we can utilize that. And of course, they offer a dashboard system to be able to track and better understand how the student performs. So don't forget about any of those. All right. Now, things like Google Forms or Nearpod and others, don't forget about those, because my goodness, Google Forms offers some really neat things. And by the way, here's a link, that bit.ly link provides you to, I think it's 80 different ways of using Google Forms for assessment. The nice thing I like about Google Forms is they do everything from checklists to check-in to check-outs, and we'll talk about that, to the fact that I can not only put in text, but I can put in an image, I can put in a video, I can put in an audio file. All those things I can easily insert that's already built for assessment. I can put in YouTube clips. My goodness, Google and YouTube are the same company, and make a connection there, and then again, I have a dashboard to be able to take a look at that assessment information. So don't forget about Google Forms or things like Google Forms that might sit in our learning management system. They're quite powerful. Now, another element we need to think about with our indirect measures is the fact that they should be based on a rubric. And that's the beauty of the indirect measures. And by the way, rubrics can vary. I think I have a second one here. Yeah, so rubrics vary. I mean, we don't necessarily have to have the numbers across like it does here. We could have rainbows to thunderstorms. But the big thing about rubrics is not only do they allow for options, but they give us a pathway. They allow for the user to know what we're expecting. They allow for the user to know what is expected, not only in terms of the completion, but also to get the score they want. And by the way, it gives a map for the adult in the home, the learning coach, so they better understand what's expected, and therefore they can assist their child or their the student, the individual at home, to be able to complete these. So all critical things there as well. But to me, rubrics also allow options for students, and by offering options for students, what they do is they allow for us to maybe do a poster or a video or an audio or something beyond just simply that essay that we normally would do face-to-face. And of course, a lot of digital tools are allowing them to do that. Here's a link just simply about information about rubrics if you need that. But let's talk about some of these indirect measures. So indirect measures, for example, video. My goodness, video offers so much, right? There's so many different things we can do with video, as I'm doing right now, just a plain base, here I am talking. But there's also so many other things students can do. So for example, they could do a virtual exit slip with a video, and they could post a short video about what they understood, what they didn't understand, where the problems were. They could explain a math problem out loud. They could offer a demonstration of a skill. They could do a presentation. They could do an outline in terms of writing for what they want to do. They could do that more visually. A host of other things. They could record their articulation fluency. They could record what they're able to do from a fine motor, gross motor perspective. They could record vocabulary. The list goes on and on and on, and what we could do to demonstrate not only attention to a progress monitoring for goal and benchmark, but also just for traditional assessment. All right, in addition to movies, well, and by the way, in addition to movies, to be able to create the movie and all that, we have planning. And in planning, that could be another component of assessment. Well, what do you mean, Sean? You have a comic strip and a graphic organizer. Well, let me explain. So for example, if we wanted to storyboard out, if we wanted to organize, if we wanted to graphically organize our ideas, sequence, outline, whatever word you want to use, there's a lot of tools that we could use out there, everything from book creators to audio components that would allow us to, as we prepare that video or prepare that visualization, we could create a subproduct, which would be like, instead of writing that full draft of a paper, we have them outline the draft and we have them outline the outline, things of that nature. Well, we can do the same thing in digital. So prior to that final, there could be components that we have the child complete, we better understand. So for example, we could do this with comic books. There's a number of different comic book sites out there, Make Believe Comics, Storyboard That is the one in the bottom there. They allow us for the backgrounds automatically there, characters are there, colors there. We can put in think balloons, thought balloons, talk balloons, and all that could be sequenced out to provide that outline prior to the actual video that we actually create. Now, presentation-wise, oh my goodness, there's a host of different things to think about. Everything from interviews to demonstrating knowledge to create a how-to video to explain what they know from a science perspective. And I'm sorry, my hand's over here taking a look at the timer as we go along here. I could perform a lab experience. I could go out into the backyard and do some experiences that you want me to do. So there's a host of things I could record and share with you to demonstrate that knowledge. And if you're wondering why the picture of a child with Down syndrome, that's my son, his senior picture, and he did not finish school without, my goodness, video beginning 3rd grade on. That was critical for him face-to-face, let alone in an online asynchronous mode. Now, of course, we can't forget audio, because audio does something very similar to video, but of course, with the audio, maybe we don't need the images, back to articulation fluency for speech, or anything in respect for speech. I could be practicing sounding that out. I could do that remotely. I could do that in the home. I could do that out in the environment, depending upon the exposure I have in this social isolation perspective. And of course, I could verbally explain to you what I know, the steps, things of that nature, to demonstrate my understanding. So those are all things, and many of these are for free. Some of them are actually video-based, like iMovie, but I can record without the images. VoiceThread allows me to provide feedback to a video and a host of other things. So a lot of neat things when it comes to the audio component. Now, the digital books, as I mentioned a moment ago, not only allow me sequence, but I can put in images, I can put in text, I can audio record, I can have it go text to speech. There's a number of components I can put in there to allow me to organize my thoughts, structure my thoughts, share what I know as I try to produce that video, which will be that final paper, so to speak. But here I'm providing that outline, that draft 1, 2, 3, based on some of these components. So I'm one, providing multiple options to do it. 2, the rubric is able to score it there. 3, I'm able to measure a number of different things, including some of your goals and benchmarks, but also your content and your understanding. So a lot of different supports there. Oh, and by the way, visual images that of themselves could be submitted for product and understanding, but they could also be used like infographics to outline my thoughts, comic strips to structure, but also, again, I could share what I know just from that. So a number of different measure for indirect components. Now, another element we need to think about, and we can't forget in terms of the measures, would be the fact that the homeschool progress monitoring. And that could be everything from, well, overall behavioral observations, but frequency recording, duration, interval recording, and everything like that. Now, wait, we're asking the parent to do that, or the adult in the home? Well, yes. First of all, we can model that via a video conference. We can model it via a self-modeling video that we create for the adult in the home. We provide them the tools for them to complete the steps, and then they collect the data. And by the way, that data is going to be very helpful for them. They're going to understand better what's happening with their child, what they're seeing, why they're not engaged, what the challenge might be, what the distraction might be. That data is going to be critical to us as well. One, back to our goal and benchmark, but also to what we're seeing or not seeing, because of course we're at a distance, with that child's interaction. So empowering the parent, and I can't emphasize that enough, we create the tool. We then educate them on how to utilize the tool. We give them the purpose for utilizing that tool. And then of course they facilitate and they complete it. And by the way, we're going to want them hopefully to create a digital tool, complete a digital tool, because once it's completed, it would automatically be scored through our learning management system, like something like Google Forms. And in so doing, we have that data, and then we can operationalize not only from what we need to do for the IEP, but also what we need to do for the next steps in terms of instruction. So that home-school communication, remember, that's critical. They're their eyes or ears, eyes and ears. They're the ones that are observing things. They're the ones that are giving us feedback. And by the way, the observation in the form and we structure will give the type of feedback we need, which is really, really critical. Now, before we leave here, I want to also emphasize the fact that, yes, we can go back to traditional scoring in terms of, traditional writing. But with that, if we're going to draft and things of that nature, let's use some digital tools. So, for example, speech to text or word prediction, or when we come to drafting, Grammarly and other mechanics. And of course, Voice Dream Writer will help us with drafting. There's a number of tools that will help us with the drafting process. And of course, Voice Dream Reader, something like that, will not only be able to read the text to speech, but also do a speech to text component in terms of my editing and support there. So a lot of different tools there. But again, I can't forget about other components that could help in the writing process. Now again, here, word prediction is going to generate words. Speech to text is going to generate content. Mechanics are going to edit the words. But if I'm having difficulty with the word component, I need more visual, I need more structure, go outside the box and turn to the writing, to some of the things we've already mentioned. Infographics, I think we mentioned earlier, but it can be, in addition to what is there, very, very helpful. And in addition, of course, we have everything from storyboards, as I mentioned before, to speaking assignments, to video, which is speaking, and of course visualizing, a host of other things. So I need to wrap up. That's a very brief overview. Now hopefully it sets you up for a few questions that we'll get together and talk about. My email address is there. The schoolvirtually.org site extends a lot of this information. And by the way, folks, I'm coming to the 15 minutes, so I'm going to press that so the bell doesn't go off. And hopefully this has been helpful. My email if you need questions. Looking forward to interacting with you in that small group session that will follow this video. Thanks so much.